The town of Plainville. Established in 1721 at the geographical center of Connecticut.
I'd like to welcome everybody to our forum this evening to discuss a report and a review of Valley Water Systems. This is the water company in Plainville that provides all of our water supply. This is a revisit from Valley Water from 2 years ago. We had a similar forum to speak about water quality issues in Plainville. We had a number of people here that came and spoke, and they had some concerns, some ideas, and some thoughts. And after that, we reconvened with Valley Water from the town of Plainville. My name is Kathy Puglisi. I'm the town council chair. And this evening, we're going to have a presentation about some of the work that's been done since 2 years ago. There's a number of folks here that are going to be speaking and giving us some more information. Folks from the state of Connecticut, certainly representatives of Valley Water, and there'll be an explanation of the work that's been going on for the past 2 years. So with that, I'd like to turn the program over to Robert Lee. He is our town manager. He's going to be our moderator for this evening, and he'll be introducing the folks that'll be presenting tonight. So once again, thank you so very much for coming and listening to the news that we have to present.
Thank you, Kathy. We are taping the meeting this evening to be played back on Nutmeg TV at a future time, and we'll try to publicize those dates for people who who either couldn't make it tonight or would like to review it again. I would like to introduce some people who will be speaking. Well, first let me introduce my staff. Scott Colby, who's the assistant to the town manager, is in the back. He's helping out with the taping of the meeting this evening. John Bossy, the town engineer, is sitting over in this corner. We have another member of the town council, Rosemary Morente, is here this evening. And just a housekeeping item, restrooms, if you need to use the restroom. It's down the 400 hall. You go out this door, make a right, and there's signs that will show you where to go. Last time we had this 2 years ago, we failed to do that, and we got in trouble for it, so thought we'd get that out of the way. Anyhow, again, there was agendas outside. We're going to try to follow them. There'll be plenty of time at the end. We'll try to keep the presentation, relatively short. There'll be plenty of time at the end for people to ask questions, make comments as well. So I would ask for patience as far as that's concerned. This evening from Valley Water, we have Don Vaughn, who's in charge of Valley Water. Don's sitting in the center aisle. Nick LaChance, Tom Hansen, and Bill Gowski. From Ty Bond, who's going to be doing the presentation, we have John McClellan, who will be the presenter, and he's accompanied with Peter Gallen. From the Department of Health, we have Lori Matthew, who's here, and Tom Chara. From the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, we have Frank Argieri, and we have Mary Ellen Zhang, who also happens to live in Plainville. So, and she works for Pura. And we also have from the Plainville-Southington Health District, the Director of Health, Shane Lockwood, and the Assistant Director, Amy Schultz. Okay. So, having made the introductions, we're going to start off with a presentation by Ty and Bond, and I'll turn the microphone over to John. You can walk around if you want to. You don't feel.
Okay. Thanks, Robert. Good evening, everybody. I'm, again, John McClellan with Ty and Bond. So Valley Water hired us to do a study of alternatives for treating the water quality issue, which is hardness, as it says on our first slide. So I'll start by giving a little bit of background. First of all, what is hardness? Hardness is, in one word, calcium concentration in the water. Also, magnesium is a component of hardness that's usually present in lower concentrations. As far as health impacts, there's no negative health impact from calcium. It's basically a nuisance constituent, and I'm sure, as most of you are familiar with, if you live here, that it leaves soap scum You know, it will leave stains on glasses and dishes when you wash them in the washing machine. It can form scale and clog up pipes. And there's a couple of pictures here of, you know, of nuisance buildups from calcium. So what is the typical range of calcium? This little chart gives a listing of what is normally considered soft water, which has low calcium concentration, through very hard, with ranges. And so if you get above, in this 120 to 180 range, it's considered hard. Above 180, it's considered very hard. So in the case of Plainville, we have very hard water, but a little bit of background on this. The first thing that we did when we took on this study was to look at historical data that was available. And there was a study that was done by Valley Water in 2017. That was one of the first things that we looked at. And now Valley Water has two groundwater sources, the Johnson Ave well field and the Woodford Ave well field. These are typical concentrations of hardness that you see coming from the wells, and as you can see, both of these are well into the very hard classification. Anything over 180 was considered very hard. In 2017, there was a survey done all throughout the distribution system, which is depicted in this map here, and 32 samples were taken, and the range in those measured in the distribution system was anywhere from 190 to 322 milligrams per liter. And again, that's a very hard classification. This picture shows, by color coding, what all the individual samples were in the system. So one of the tools that we used to do this study, which I'll talk a little bit more about later, was a computer model of the distribution system that we developed. And so this slide is output of the existing conditions, typical existing conditions, and again you can see the key features. This shows the entire Plainville distribution system. The water mains are depicted as black lines, and the color-coded dots are basically the computer model predicted concentration of hardness everywhere in the system. So you can see that the Johnson Avenue wells are up here. This yellow color indicates the zone of influence of the Johnson wells. The Woodford Avenue wells down here have even higher concentration. Again, the yellow color is over 200, the red is over 300. As far as treatment, the one that I want to concentrate on here is polyphosphate, because that's the chemical that's added to kind of mitigate the nuisance effect of hardness. So what polyphosphates do is sequester the hardness. In other words, they kind of chemically bind up the dissolved calcium ions in solution and prevent them from, or at least they prevent some of the negative effects. They prevent precipitation, which causes scale formation. So that is currently what the treatment in place is for hardness in the valley system. The thing to note is that the higher the hardness concentration, the less effective this chemical treatment is going to be. So this current chemical treatment, it cures the symptom, but it doesn't address the actual problem. It doesn't actually remove hardness from the water. So what we looked into was alternatives to actually remove the calcium. So the study objective was to lower the hardness concentration for all customers in the system to less than 150 milligrams per liter. And this is a somewhat arbitrary number, but it's generally, an industry practice considered a number above which you're likely to get lots of customer complaints and below which you're not going to get complaints. So we picked that as the study objective. So our approach included, first of all, reviewing all the available historical data, and then developing a computer model of the system so that we could look at what the effect would be system-wide, depending on which alternatives we were picking. We looked at several different alternatives, and then we ultimately did cost estimates on on the alternatives that were feasible, and we'll present that as we go along. Okay, so we looked at really kind of two things. First of all was what you have to treat in order to meet the water quality objectives. In other words, the Johnson wells, Woodford Avenue wells, both or neither of them. So that's what the next couple of slides present. So this is a depiction of the model output for a scenario where we only treated the Johnson Avenue well field. And as you can see, I don't know if you can see the legend colors too well, but these greenish yellow are basically areas in the system where the treated water meets our study objective. But the problem with this is that this area, which is the area that's influenced by the Woodford Avenue well, still stays well above the target. Same deal for Woodford. We looked at just treating Woodford and not Johnson. And it was basically the same thing. The area around Woodford wells looks really good. It's hard to distinguish the colors, but anyway, that's good. The greenish is good, and the yellowish is above our treatment objective. So neither of these alternatives, just treating one well or the other, looks like it would work system-wide. All right, so this graph is basically another way of presenting the same information. So what we have on the x-axis here is different ranges of hardness concentration, going from low to high. And this line is the cutoff, where our study objective is. So this is the 100 to 150 range. So things in this category meet our objective. This shows the percentage of points in the system that meet the study objective of 150 milligrams per liter. And these color codings show the various alternatives. So the gray one is no treatment, orange is treat Woodford only, blue is treat Johnson, green is treat both. So if we look at treat both, 100% of the system would be within the target range of less than 150 milligrams per liter. For example, if we look at the orange, that's treat Woodford, 18% plus or minus of the system would be within our target range, and over 80% would be in the 150 to 200 milligram per liter range, which is above, so on and so forth. The option of treating Johnson, 60% would be within the target range, but you'd have all of these blue ones would be above, and this one in particular, 20% would be in the 250 to 300 range. So the takeaway and bottom line of this is that in order to meet the objective of getting everybody below 150 milligrams per liter, what we would need to do would be install a treatment system at each of the well facilities. So that's the conclusion. So from there we go on to look at what are the treatment options. So we basically looked at four. The first one, ion exchange. This is a treatment process that's basically the same thing as what you would find in your home water treatment system. Reverse osmosis is kind of a fancy membrane filtration option. And these two, lime softening, are not common in New England, but the commonly used process out west where they have generally have much harder water, and the treatment for it is more common. So each one of these is easily capable of meeting the treatment objective. Basically, the difference is the size of the equipment, how much it costs to operate, and how much wastewater residuals does it generate. So I'm not going to go into detail on these, but this chart shows shows the costs, annualized costs of each of these options. And what we found was that ion exchange was definitely the most economical way to go. So capital cost estimated, and this is for 2 treatment plants, one at each of the groundwater facilities, would be about $3.7 million. Annual operating costs about $100,000. And this is really the column that we use to compare apples to apples. So this is the debt service on the capital amount plus the operating expenses. So in other words, it's the total annualized cost that it would cost to put this in place and operate it. And we figured ion exchange at a little under $400,000 a year, getting more expensive from there. So I'm almost done here, but just a couple of more comments on how this selected process works. Again, this is very similar to what happens in a typical home softener. Basically, you have a resin that's saturated with sodium ions, and you run the water through it, and what it does is it swaps the calcium and magnesium ions in the water for sodium ions. And then once it gets depleted, you have to replenish it by washing it with a brine that contains more sodium. So you end up with water that is soft, doesn't have calcium or magnesium, but it has sodium ions in place of them. Sodium ions, we estimate for this system would be above the public notification level, which is 28 milligrams per liter, but it would be below the EPA recommended health limit of 60. So there is a downside to this process. As far as wastewater, this thing will generate waste brine, and what we would have to do with these systems, with both of the well fields, would be construct a little sewer force main to the nearest sewer, and then we would discharge the regeneration water to the sewer. The actual amount of water that gets produced by this is it's something I think we figured 600 or 700 gallons a day. So it's a very small amount of waste compared to the amount of water that's being produced. This is just kind of a little cartoon depicting what these systems look like. They're basically just big tanks filled with a resin, a medium that carries the sodium ions and picks up the calcium ions. The major components for the system that we would put in would be a one-skid system at Johnson, two-skid system at Woodford. Each one would have a separate system that would be designed in order to regenerate each of these filter things with brine solution when they get depleted. Brine storage tank, and then again a system that sends the wastewater to the sewer. So again, summary, the objective was lower the water hardness to less than 150 milligrams per liter. The selected technology, the most economical, would be an ion exchange system at both well fields. Capital costs we estimated at $3.7 million. Annual O&M cost at about $100,000. So with that, I will entertain questions. Yes.
How much does the 393,000 translate into cost to the typical customer?
I'm going to leave that one to Valley Water people.
Why don't we go through the presentation and then ask questions at the end, because some of these Mike can answer
Okay.
in between. So I think the next section was going to deal, and I'm not sure who was going to handle that from Valley Water. Nick? Okay. He's going to review the customer survey, which does get into the cost, what the impact is of doing this, and other options for softening the water on an individual basis.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening. My name is Nick LaChance. My presentation is to discuss a survey and the results that Valley Water conducted in the early summer of 2018 through an independent research firm named Words and Numbers Research Incorporated. Words and Numbers was established in 1984 and is based in Torrington, Connecticut. The goals of the survey were to provide quantitative data to Valley Water representatives regarding the customers' experiences with hard water, solutions that its individual customers have implemented, customers' perceived importance on a system-wide infrastructure project to reduce hardness, and most importantly, customers' willingness to pay for a projected rate increase of 14 to 18% for a system-wide infrastructure project. In order to stimulate customer participation in the survey, a pre-notification note was placed on the May 2018 water bills alerting all customers to the survey that would be conducted in June. A survey was either mailed or emailed to every Valley Water customer, which is a total of 5,607 customers. The survey was left open for a month in order to allow for ample time for customers to respond. A total of 1,013, or 18% of the total customer base responded. Data analysis pertaining to the demographics of the respondents was collected in an effort to understand responses more thoroughly. Such analysis pertained to how long the respondent was a customer of Valley Water, where in the town the respondent is located, and if they are a residential or commercial customer. The following statistics are the actual data collected from the survey. I'll present the subject question and then give the percentage of respondents stating that the subject is a major problem that they cannot live with. For the remaining percentage, this is not the case. That is, it was either a moderate problem that they can live with, a minimal problem, or not a problem at all. Remember, these percentages are based on only the 18% of customers who responded to the survey. First question was buildup on bathroom and kitchen fixtures. And 36% of the respondents indicated that this was a problem that they could not live with. The next question was dishwasher film on dishes and glasses. 31% of the respondents indicated this was a problem that they could not live with. Stains on bathroom tiles and toilets. 34% of the respondents indicated this was a problem that they could not live with. Then we moved on to more we moved on to yes or no questions. First question being, have you used a cleaning agent to remove stains? 63% of the respondents indicated they had. Have you used a rinsing agent in the dishwasher? 54% indicated they had. Have you replaced the water heater in less time than the warranty indicated? 25% of the respondents indicated they had. Less than 20% of customers stated they have reduced the temperature on their hot water heater, have purchased shampoo and laundry detergent specifically for hard water, or have purchased or plan to purchase a water softener. When asked if the respondent had interest and support of education from Valley Water, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is not interested and 5 is extremely interested, the average of all respondents was 2.25. When asked the importance of Valley Water to reduce the hardness on a system-wide project, 52% of the respondents said it was very or extremely important. And lastly, when the respondents were asked their willingness to pay for a system-wide project, 44% said they were willing to pay for the project. 42% were not willing, and 14% reportedly had no problem with water hardness. Based on these findings, Valley Water was not able to construct a compelling case to enact a system-wide infrastructure program to reduce the water hardness that all customers would be subject to paying in the form of a rate increase. Valley Water values their customers' efforts and responses to the survey. The company believes that based on the reported results, it has acted in accordance with the majority of its customers in mind. Due to the fact that 18% of the total customer base responded, of which 56% were not willing to pay for a system-wide infrastructure project to reduce water hardness. To conclude, we have provided literature on in-home water treatment units for your reference, which are located here on the stage as well as at the back table. And again, this is more just literature just for your own understanding on what in-home treatment units really are all about and how they can help for any individual problems that you may be having. Thank you.
Now, the first part of this program was intended to allow Valley Water, which is a private water company, to be able to give the results of their report that they engaging Ty and Bond and the results of their survey, which you just heard. But the private water company is responsible, the overseers of the private water company is the Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA, and the State Health Department. They're the ones who are actually responsible for overseeing in a couple different areas the operation of the water company. PURA reviews their budgets and approves their rates. So and the Department of Health reviews the quality of the water. So what I'd like to do is ask Lori Matthew to step forward from the Department of Public Health to at least have people understand what their role is as it relates to a private water company and a public water company as well, but one that, if it was town operated, but.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. And Kathy. Kathy, thank you. It's good to be here. Tom, come on up here with me. Sit right here. So my name is Lori Matthew. I'm the section chief of the Drinking Water Section, State Department of Public Health. I'm here with Tom Chira. And Tom is an engineer. And some interesting things that we've done recently. Tom can explain a little bit about what he's done recently on conducting a sanitary survey. It's one of the aspects of the work that we conduct with the oversight of public water systems. So recently, just out in the area, reviewing the water system and conducting the survey, which is a requirement under the Safe Drinking Water Act and is a requirement of our agency. So we can talk a little bit about the details of what he does. But we want to spend just a little bit of time talking about our role. In Connecticut, we oversee and regulate public water systems. A public water system serves 25 or more people. So in more rural areas of the state, we have towns that have 20 or 30 public water systems or 40 water systems that have a well with a tank and they serve water to the public. A lot of those are transient or non-community water systems. So many of those 2,500, actually 2,000 of those 2,500 public water systems are non-community systems. The 500 community systems, the Valley Water Company being one of them. And there's many, many sources of water, of public water supply, from a small well that yields 2 gallons a minute or to a big reservoir that serves 10 or 20 million gallons a day. So what Tom and I work on every single day and have oversight and responsibility for under our Commissioner Renee Coleman-Mitchell is that we are responsible for regulating public water systems. The state does not own public water systems. We oversee and regulate them, which means that we're responsible for enacting the Safe Drinking Water Act. So the federal government has a federal law that requires certain water quality to be overseen. And there's many different aspects. Since 1974, our department has had primacy of the Safe Drinking Water Act, and we're responsible for enacting regulations. And the Safe Drinking Water Act initially came out in the 70s and was updated in the 80s, 90s, and just recently updated with a number of different laws passed by Congress. So there's constant complexity moving forward with the Safe Drinking Water Act. So we are to assure safe and adequate. We also have quality but quantity responsibilities. Our department's been around for about 100 years in overseeing public water systems. So there's a number of state laws that we also oversee. In Connecticut, there's about 3.5 million people. 2.9 million of them consume public water in a community water system. So one of the things that we want to talk about today is just a little bit of a recap. When we first got involved, Robert had called me sometime in early 2017, maybe late 2016, about a number of complaints that he was seeing as a town manager, and we had concerns about the complaints that were out on social media. So we had a discussion, and then we held the first series of meetings and then had a public forum about 2 years ago. So one of the things that we're responsible for at the state level in the health department is to respond to complaints. We don't get many directly within probably 50 to 60 complaints about water quality, quantity issues with public water systems, but we're responsible to follow through on those complaints. And after Flint, Michigan, which was about 3 years ago now, we've seen an increase in complaints coming our way on water quality and quantity issues and concerns. Because people are generally concerned if their water has an odor or a taste problem or it looks different from day to day, or they don't have any water. We have those complaints and we're constantly following up. So I want to just turn it over to Tom now, and I just wanted to go through what we do, what we oversee, but Tom's going to get into some of more of the background, a little bit more of the history of our involvement. One of the things after Robert and I spoke, one of the things that we do with the State Department of Public Health is we have a state lab. It's a beautiful facility. It's in Rocky Hill. And we offer always, if there's a concern with water quality, we offer to pull samples of the water system and bring them to the state lab. We work with Shane Lockwood and his local health director, and we want to talk a little bit about the work that we did back in 2017 to pull some samples along with the water company. So, Tom.
Thank you, Larry. Just a quick show of hands. How many people were here almost exactly 2 years ago for the original forum that we had? Okay. So one of the things that I just want to do very quickly was just to kind of go over a recap of what we did. Lori had mentioned, why we had gotten involved, and just a very quick overview. And as Lori mentioned, the town had received over 100 water quality complaints, primarily attributed to hardness. And so what we had offered was to go out and do our own sampling in conjunction with the local health department, and then we utilize the services of our state laboratory in Rocky Hill to actually do the analysis. And we actually worked with the town to come up with representative sampling locations throughout the whole town. And this was just a quick map. We had talked about this a couple years ago, but this just kind of gives an overview of where in Plainville we had collected our water quality samples. We really try to cover all areas of the distribution system as much as possible. Just an example of the type of sample bottles that we used 2 years ago, and we were sampling from people's outdoor spigots. These are water quality results. I know these are very difficult to read. We actually had handouts 2 years ago, and we handed them out to people who were interested. It seems like there are a lot of new folks here tonight, so if you are interested in getting a copy of these results from 2017, please feel free to come to me or Lori after the forum, and we can give you our business cards, and you can certainly contact us, and we can provide these to you. And we had talked about 2 years ago the test results of the sampling that we had done, and one of the things that we had talked about was differentiating between what is called the maximum contaminant level. These are health-based, federal, and or state standards which are enforceable. So if systems do not meet these standards, we could actually do enforcement and ensure that systems comply with these MCLs. Then you also have what's called secondary maximum contaminant levels, and they're called secondary for a reason because these are mostly aesthetic type of issues and standards. And some of the things that systems throughout the whole state collect, some of the parameters, for example, like pH, color, turbidity, and odor. And this kind of gives you an idea as to the appearance of the water, the taste, the odor. And the conclusion from the 32 sample results that we collected was that all 32 sample results were below all of the established standards. So hardness, I'm not going to go over this because John did a good job of going over what hardness is. The levels that we have are pretty much the same exact levels that John had in his presentation, but the bottom line is 120, anything above 120 is considered fairly hard water, and all of the 32 samples that we had collected 2 years ago, all 32 of them were above 180 milligrams per liter. And so you could conclude that the water at that time from the 32 samples that were collected could be classified as very hard. And the important thing to understand is there is no regulatory standard for hardness. I think John talked about some of the effects of hard water and how it could form scale and plug up fixtures and pipes. May explain particulate matter that you may be seeing in your aerator. Obviously, hot water heater, it increases the chemical reaction, so it speeds up the formation of hard water and scale. It could affect the life and efficiency of appliances, especially appliances that use hot water. It can leave white residue, difficult to clean, and may cause taste and odor issues. Health effects, the World Health Organization, and 2 years ago, for those of you who were here, we actually had one of our toxicologists was here to talk about the health effects. There are no negative health effects as it relates to hardness. Hard water may actually protect against heart disease. There's research out there. Calcium and magnesium are the main minerals that contribute to hardness, and both are essential minerals in our everyday diets. And from a nutritional perspective, consuming too little of calcium magnesium can be a problem in and of itself. And just to point out that the highest levels of hardness that were analyzed for in the samples we collected 2 years ago, overall they contribute to a very small percentage of the minerals that we get during our normal diets. So some of the outcomes, what we've been doing, since the sampling 2 years ago, as Lori mentioned, we participated in the public forum almost 2 years ago. And we were in full support of the consensus to have have Valley Water hire a consulting engineer to study the entire water system and to conduct the customer survey. We were 100% in support of that. One thing I want to stress is that we continue to treat and respond to all customer complaints that we get. There's not one customer complaint that's any less than any other one that we get. Every customer complaint that comes into our office, we answer in a timely fashion. We actually, 2 of my staff are out this week driving around to various systems throughout the state, responding to customer complaints and doing sampling. So as Lori mentioned, in the post-Flint world we live in, customer complaints are definitely something that we pay close attention to. And we are certainly available at any time, not just during this forum, but any time. Feel free to give our office a call and we could answer any general questions that people may have. We also provide technical assistance to all of our public water systems. And we do have a hardness fact sheet that we have up on our website. I know the link could be a little bit hard to see from here, but again, feel free to contact myself or Lori and we can provide you with any information. And just the last slide that I want to leave, at least from our perspective, is our expectations. Although I had mentioned that there is no regulatory standard that exists for hardness, at the same time, in the post-Flint world that we live in, we realize and understand that we have to be very sensitive to customer complaints. And just because something doesn't have a regulatory standard doesn't mean that it's okay and that we don't understand the customer complaints. And I guess we were kind of thinking about this earlier today, and our sense is if the customers can feel it, sense it, see it, and it's causing them financial hardship, then from our perspective, it is a water quality issue and it's a customer service issue, and is our expectation of all of our water systems that we regulate throughout the whole state. Our expectation is full transparency and sharing of all available hardness mitigation options, clear understanding for the customers of what the cost is required if there is a mitigation option that is to be pursued, system-wide survey of the potential surcharge, clear and easy to follow, the information that systems provide to their customers. Our expectation is that it's clear, it's transparent, it's easy to follow. And we expect all of our water systems to, take the lead in leveraging resources to help, their affected customers, dealing with whatever issue that may be, that they may be dealing with. It could be a whole town-wide issue. It could be a certain part of a certain town or community. But the last 2 slides are really kind of what we wanted to focus on, and kind of what we've been doing, what our expectations are since we were last here 2 years ago. So with that, I'll turn it over back to Robert.
And moving this along, I'm going to introduce Frank Argieri from Pura, who will come up and talk about their responsibilities with regards to private water systems. I expect we'll be done in about probably 10 minutes or so before we go to questions. So hopefully we'll get the presentations over with, but I think it's good for everybody to understand at least how everything kind of operates with regards to these water systems.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening. My name is Frank Algeri. I'm with Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, also known as PURA. So I've been asked to speak with you regarding what our role is. I'll speak briefly because at this moment PURA's role is very limited. So what is PURA? We're the agency that's charged with regulating the rates and services of the investor-owned utility services, electric, natural gas, water, telecommunications. So in those companies, those industries that are still wholly regulated, like Valley Water, our task is to balance the public's right to safe, adequate, and reliable service at a reasonable rate with the provider's right to a reasonable rate of return on the investment. So there's been talk tonight about measures that could be taken on water quality, measures that could be system-wide. What we would be or could be responsible for is any subsequent request that is received from Valley Water if they wanted to implement these measures. What we would look at is how these measures would affect rates and ultimately who's to pay for those system-wide measures. So this request could come in as a normal rate request or it could come in some other form, but no matter how we get it, should we get it, if we get it, it'll be subject to our formal rate hearing process. There'll be evidence, testimony, hearings, cross-examination, and at the end of that entire process, any conclusions that we make will be predicated upon those deliberations and consideration of all the evidence and testimony presented. So like I said, unfortunately at this point, our role is limited. It would be a future speculative role should the company come to us to have us review any measures that they could take. But what we do offer also is a consumer affairs unit where utility customers may call us with any questions or complaints, and that's not just for Valley Water, that's for electric, gas, cable, telecom. And if you have a question with your utilities, feel free to call us. We can be reached by telephone, email, US mail. We even have a website form. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Next, I'm going to call up Shane Lockwood. He's our local health director. He's part of the regional Plainville-Southington Health District, and he'll have some brief remarks. I want to make sure you're able to put a face to a name because he's the person who sometimes is the first contact with regards to any health issues, both in Plainville or Southington.
Thank you, Robert. Again, my name's Shane Lockwood. I'm the Director of Health of Plainville-Southington Health District. Again, usually we get a call first. You like to talk to somebody locally who might be aware of a system. So what we've done on this issue is work very closely with DPH. If we get a complaint, we'll talk to DPH about it. In the past, when they've received complaints, they'll give us a call. We've also worked closely with them recently on sanitary surveys where we go look at system. Amy Schultz, our chief sanitarian, was out with Tom and his crew recently looking at the system. We've done testing, water testing in the past, I think over 32 sample and a few more here and there over my 7 years in the district. And probably one of the biggest things we could do is help distribute information. We're in town, we're at the town hall, we have a website, it's an easy call. So as information comes in about this, we could get it out to people very quickly. So think of us as, if you have a question, you need information, give us a call, visit our website, and we're able to distribute information that way. Thank you.
Okay, now we'll get to questions and comments. So I don't know if John, you're going to answer the technical questions on the report? And Nick, I assume that you'll answer questions with regards to the survey or the impact to the rates and those kinds of things. So why don't you step forward, both of you step forward. If there's any other questions that come forward, that will either be for public health or Pura, we'll get them at the mic as well. What I'll ask you to do is we have a second microphone, which just raise your hand, I'll bring in the microphone. Please give your name and address, and then we'll try to direct your questions. So I'll hand you this microphone. Let me turn on this one. Okay. I'm going to ask the first question. And I know that the report also talked about or looked into blending water with the city of New Britain, the New Britain water system, which has a main pipe that runs right through our community, and there are some cross connections. Could you speak a little bit about that aspect of the report?
We did look at it as an option. I think we looked at two different scenarios that involved taking different amounts of water from New Britain. The first thing to note was that, at least for the alternatives that we considered, we would have needed treatment in addition to blending New Britain water. I think one of them was a 300 GPM average take, and the other was what we were told was the maximum, which was 600. In a nutshell, we didn't find that either of them were cost competitive with the alternative that won. Additionally, there's some potential other problems that we would have to look at with regard to blending New Britain's water, which is a surface water source, with the groundwater. So anyway, neither of those alternatives were selected as the best one.
Okay, question? You raise your hand. Shane will hand you a microphone.
Thank you. My name is Candace Kachowski, and I'm on Northwest Drive in Plainville. I've got some statements and a question towards the end. I guess my first issue is with the questionnaire that went out. I work in IT. I know what data looks like, and I question the form of that questionnaire, first of all. A lot of people are frustrated with dealing with Valley Water. I know I've had some very negative experiences just calling into your support people. People aren't going to want to answer questionnaires if they're pretty sure they know what the answer is going to be. It's a waste of their time. And I know a lot of people feel as if they've been banging their head against a wall for quite some time with this. The questionnaire did not cover things other than your water heater. I've lived in the same condo since 2002, and I have had 4 dishwashers. I have had 5 coffee makers. I chip water residue off of my humidifiers in the winter with a knife every 2 days. And I'm in the good area of Plainville. I can't imagine what's going on with the people down in the southeast corner. It's not necessarily a health issue, so I wouldn't have gone to Department of Public Health about this, which is why they probably haven't had a lot of complaints with it. It doesn't affect my health. It's not necessarily bad for me. I understand that. I understand the chemicals, but it is ruinous when it comes to replacing items in my house. At this point, I'm pretty sure my water heater is held together with calcium, and that's about it. I'd like to know as well, why is none of this considered a cost of doing business, not even a portion of it? We were given an option of, do you want to pay for it or not? I work a full-time job. I also have a business within Plainville. If I sell a substandard product, people won't buy it. It's a cost of doing business. You put out a good product or people won't take it. We don't have a choice. We have to have water if we live in this town. So we don't have an alternative. So how can that be addressed? Was there any consideration of Valley Water, who supplies the product, dealing with some of the cost?
I think that we can be sympathetic to the comments that you've just made and your experiences that you have, and I'm sure your experiences are not unique only to yourself as well. As far as the survey goes, we utilize a third-party independent research firm in which they constructed the questionnaire in their determination as to the particulars that would be most constructive to give to Valley representatives, to allow them the opportunity to evaluate what those particular responses were from the customers. we didn't necessarily have input on what the specific questions were that were going to be addressed within that questionnaire in order to, I guess, remain, or allow the survey to remain impartial, to allow for the integrity of the survey. I do understand, that there is frustration. There may be frustration with the survey. I think what we have tried to do, and especially in some of the messages that we've sent out, is to really drive the point home that this was a third party, completely independent of anything that Valley Water did, in order to gain as much understanding and gain as much qualitative data that we could, so that we could really look at the concerns of our customer base and see if this is specific to any general areas, which is why we looked at the demographics as to where people live and where the responses were coming in from, and really to see if there was an opportunity to identify if there was a majority of the customers that felt as though the action needed to be taken in the form of a system-wide infrastructure update.
I think that the people who did the questionnaire did not do it justice. Simply because data can be stacked, questions can be stacked to get a result closer to what you're looking for. And if nobody brought up the fact that maybe things should be paid for a different way, maybe there are other options, you're not going to get results you're going to get the results you want.
Good evening. My name's Tom Pish. I live on 40 Milford Street in town here. I bought my house in 1980. Well, I'm going to tell you, since I've been here, I put in more than 4 hot water heaters, numerous Delta faucets, shut-offs that don't shut off, all rotted out. If the last Delta faucet, I took a shower in January, shut it off, handle fell off, it was all rotted inside, okay? Yeah, so the issue is this. I understand what everybody is saying here, but I'm going to tell you something. Out in front of my house, I talked to the water department 2 years ago, probably in 2017, about these complaints. I have a Lowe's-style home filter in there, not the big ones that you buy. All right, every 3 months I change. It's black inside. It's got dirt in it. I was explained that the main pipe from the Woodford well that comes down to my house, also to the Linden School and the high school, is a cast iron pipe. All the new ones have been replaced with concrete liners. All right? Last year, they knew about it, but last year, they come in and put all new roads down Milford and Maple Street and never changed the pipes in that road that are 100 years old. Now, a few years ago, I had a little job with the facilities department at the high school. I'm retired, but I had a little part-time job. Facilities manager was calling at the water company because he had brown water in Linden School toilets that I was cleaning that I said the children didn't flush the toilets, and trouble at the high school. And it took them about a couple of weeks for them to solve that problem. So any water, regardless of this hardness and whatever else, it's still running down that pipe. The teachers do not drink the water in this town. The high school has a paid come in Poland Springs to come in and bring them jugs of water. Teachers don't drink it. But your children, on a hot sunny day next week, playing in there, they come and drink out of them faucets that are covered in white calcium because the janitors can't use any chemicals to clean that stainless. It has to be green, all right? Special clean, easy chemicals. So there's a lot of issues here. You could do what you want with the hardness, put that in there, but that pipe coming down that street, that's the main well, I was told, coming in and pumping to our children, which I'm going to have 5 in that school systems that bother me. My life expectancy is maybe 20 years, all right, if I make it, and I ain't dribbling. But the idea is, there's children there, and they're drinking this stuff. Who's going to tell them in 10 years that the magnesium was too high, and now you got brain damage? No, it's good now, but 20 years from now? You know, these issues, so... That pipe, I had them flush it in September. I went to the water company. They supposed to flush it in the spring, the fire hydrant, right up the street. I didn't see them. I'm retired now. I called them. They come in 2 hours later and flushed that pipe out. My water got a tad better. So the issue's a little bit more than this pipe should have been replaced before they put that new road in too, because our children are drinking this stuff, and all the schools. Thanks for your time, appreciate it. And I'll pay 20% more every month for better water. I will pay, because I don't have to get the bottled water my wife keeps dragging in the house that I gotta keep picking up. I got a bad back. Help me out.
Hi, good evening, Dan Butler from Pinckney Avenue. Question for our Valley Water representatives. Can you repeat the percentage of people who responded to the survey? I believe you said it was 18%?
That's correct, 18%.
Okay. And the question about, can you state the question about favoring or not favoring an increase? I think it was 14 to 16%.
Sure. So we estimated that it would be a 14 to 18% increase based off of the iron exchange method.
Okay.
And the respondents, when the respondents were asked their willingness to pay for a system-wide project, 44% said they were willing to pay for the project, 42% were not willing to pay, and 14% reportedly had no problems.
And if I understood you correctly, when you made your presentation, you've already decided that you're not going to proceed with anything? Is that correct?
At this time, for system-wide infrastructure improvements, the data that we've received has not been able to make a compelling case for us to go ahead and construct a system-wide infrastructure project.
Okay, and that's based upon the 18% result?
That's based upon the 18% of the total customer base that responded, and then the additional questions afterwards.
Okay, I guess my concern is, and I understand when you have a vote in a town, a small percentage of those involved respond, so we're all familiar with that, but I question the validity of the decision not to move forward when 44% did express a willingness to pay. I think this needs to go further, not end here, because it seems that this presentation could have ended with you just standing up and saying, based upon the survey, we've decided we're not moving forward with any system-wide changes, and that's a concern. To the woman's point, should this be just a resident-borne expense, or should it be borne also by the company as part of their doing business and responding to customers' complaints? Again, it seems like this was a dumb decision before we walked in here, and again, a concern.
David King, Trumbull Avenue. Do you know approximately how many gallons of water go through the system per year?
1.5 million.
Per day. It's per day.
The average per day is 1.5 million gallons.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, thank you. Arnold Menschel, 6 Island Drive here in town. I haven't heard any response to Mr. Butler's questions, or, my original question was, how much does the $393,000 come out to for the average customer? And again, obviously, that question assumes what has been asked before, which is that 100% of the expense would be borne, as I understand it, by the customers, with none being assumed by the company. And of course, if you don't go before Pura, then there's nothing for them to decide whether any of that should be borne by the company. So if you could respond to those questions.
Sure. Based upon the information that we have at hand today, we're concluding that it's going to be an estimate of an 18% increase based off of the current rates, and that would be, and just to make it clear, that would be independent of any other future potential rate adjustment down the road for any other projects, any other expenses, whatever the case may be. The present rates go back to 2010 as what they call a test year when we determine what our rates are based upon. So the rates have not increased since that time.
But what does 18% mean to the average customer? Has that ever been brought to their attention? What does that mean on an average bill?
On average bill. I can speculate here. Of course, it's all based off of consumption. It's based off of what every individual resident does for their water consumption. I believe that our average bill is right around that $28 range on a monthly basis. So applying the 18% to that, we can conclude that it'd be about a $5 per month increase.
Was that ever shared in the survey?
We provided the percentage that we would be looking at. We did not break it down to the specific dollar because, again, each household is different in their water consumption needs.
So compared to, $5 a month compared to replacing the water heater on an early basis, the dishwashers on an early basis, was that ever presented to the customers?
I feel as though.
Let me help you out here a little bit, Nick. Don Vaughn, president of the water company. The demand and the consumption on individual customers it varies. It's all over the lot. What did you say the average? $20. It's much more than that, actually. You can get bills at $100, $80. So the 18% would be whatever that is. The calculation that we did was a straight across the board revenue calculation, so that it would be just an 18% surcharge on an existing bill.
Well, but that still doesn't answer my question as to whether the customers, when they were presented the survey, were told what it would mean to an average bill compared to what it ends up costing. Apparently, at least 44% who said they would pay, and the others, I'm questioning whether they have been provided with the information as to what it's really costing them if they don't get this done, not to mention that whether the company, as has been asked before, should bear some of this cost.
I think there's a couple of parts to that question, if I heard you correctly. We didn't get explicit with how much it would be incrementally for each customer. It would be almost impossible to do that. So we just left it at 18%, thinking that the customers could make that calculation themselves. Relative to the company participating in the cost of treatment, I don't know whether that would be a viable option, and I think the folks from Pura can answer that question better than I. I haven't heard of that type of thing before. When there's an improvement made in any facility, usually the users pay for it. And I think there was an improvement made in the wastewater treatment plant just recently where there was a vote to make the improvement there. So that would be just a simple example of the users paying for improvements. You know, it's typical that investments are borne by, the cost of those investments are borne by the customers. As an example, we spend, last year we spent $1.2 million in infrastructure improvements in the town. This year we expect to spend again somewhere in that vicinity. So there's a budget and a maximum that we can spend where we don't start to affect rates. As Nick said, we had our last rate increase, I think it was in 2010, and we'd like to extend that. We don't want to raise rates if we don't have to. So basically the company is really walking a fine line here, trying to balance the preferences of our customer base, trying to balance the costs, the burdens, the financial burdens that can be imposed on those customers, given the facts and given the preferences that we've seen in the survey. It's been as simple as that. You know, we've tried to be forthright. We want to do the right thing. There's just no question about it. And we think we have been doing the right thing. However, this is a very difficult question for us, whether to go ahead with a treatment plant or not. And, you know, we've listened to the customers that did respond, and that's been our conclusion. That there has been really, and I'm going to use that word that Nick used, there's been really no compelling case for us to proceed. Down the road, things may change, but we've taken the information that we have, and we've processed it, and this is the conclusion that we've come up with.
Okay, I'll just, I won't belabor this, but I'll just add my story is that when we had our water heater replaced, the plumber had to carve it up because it was so full of minerals and it could not be carried out by two people.
Let me get to some people who haven't asked a question yet.
Chris Cavallero, Robert Street. I think, first of all, I was really turned off by the way you guys presented yourself. It seems like you're just doing it because Robert E. Lee asked you to do this. It doesn't seem like you're interested in helping us at all. I think what you should do is instead of just talking, think about other ways, such as maybe looking at residential ways of individually helping houses and giving us a break on price of things. Okay, that would be a help, and like you're really trying to help us instead of just giving us a line. I've lived in this town all my life. The water's always been terrible, so I sort of accepted it. But this is your business, and you don't seem like you want to help us. And that's the way I feel. You should think about individual houses and how you can get product to them at a reasonable price and maybe some way of helping us that way. But overall, that's not going to work because you're not going to get agreement on that.
I'm just wondering if, I'm Donna Cavallero, Robert Street. I'm just wondering if you're basing this all on 18%, and I understand that you sent out a survey, but clearly that is not the true representation of how anyone feels in Plainville. So maybe you can look at being somewhere else, being at the grocery stores handing out surveys, going house to house. If you're really concerned about helping, I mean, you really don't have to. That's the point, because you don't have to do anything. That's the whole frustrating piece of this whole thing, is we have nothing. We have no power because we need water. And that's just frustrating. I'm asking you, do you live in Plainville? Do you know what it's like? And I know that the health department says that there's nothing wrong with drinking it for our health reasons, but you know what? Looking at the way our fixtures are and everything else that happens, I cannot believe that that's healthy drinking water. And that's why we're all buying water, which I hate to do because of many reasons, is recycling plastic and everything else. And there's concerns with water, plastic, that's coming out in our water too. So I just think, like, as a human being, that you would want to help us get a better product, like someone else said. It's your responsibility to give us a better product.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I can understand your feelings. Hard water is, prevalent throughout the state in groundwater supplies, but that's not to make an excuse. I'm saying that, we want to put out a good product. You've heard the DPH say that we've met and even exceeded any of the limitations. I beg your pardon, we have not exceeded any of the MCLs, the maximum contaminant levels, in 32 quality parameters. We have boundaries that we have to navigate, transgress through the process of supplying water. We want the best product that we can have. The issue is hardness. And, hardness hasn't changed since the development of our well fields. It's the same hardness that goes back to probably about the 1940s or 50s, somewhere in that era. So, a treatment plant is doable, it's buildable, but we have to listen to, customer base. There may be the folks that were against doing any treatment. They might take, and probably would take, a completely opposite view of some of the folks here. So we're kind of in between here, and we want the best product that we can have, and we also understand that we have a hard water situation.
But just on 18% is just 18% of a town saying this. You're basing everything on 18%. I just don't think it's a valid enough sample. I think it's your responsibility to go get more samples, more surveys. That's the bottom line.
Why would anybody else come here when you already shut us down?
Whoa.
That's my feeling.
It was a point that I made before too. People are discouraged.
I
They
understand.
know the decisions have been made, and why are they gonna show up? Why are they gonna take a survey, a stacked survey, for that matter?
Okay, we have some state people here as well. It's your opportunity to but they're here volunteering to come here tonight and listen. It doesn't necessarily end here tonight, okay? It's frustrating that not more people answered the survey. I'm not sure that I agree with you 100% where it says people didn't answer because they didn't think it was gonna go anywhere. This was their opportunity to answer. I'm not saying I disagree 100%, but I don't agree
But
with you.
they were only given specific questions to answer. If you don't ask the right questions, you're going to get bad data.
All right, but that's different than not answering at all.
I'm up on Peacock Road. My understanding is this system is going to cost approximately $4 million, is that correct? And we're talking a $5 increase per household for billing. So what is your projected time frame for paying off this at $5 a month per household? How long is it going to take to pay off for this $4 million?
That's a complex question. First of all, I don't think the $5 question is really accurate. I would characterize that as more of an 18% increase over existing bills.
I'm looking at it as your average, let's say your average bill is $25 a month for water. Is that about right?
Well, would you repeat that again?
Is your average bill about $25 a month for water? Or $30? Let's say it's $30. Okay, what's a 18% increase of $30?
I can't boil down that number and use that to project maybe how long it would take to pay for a treatment plant? Is that the question?
Yeah, that's what I'm basically asking. I'm thinking it's somewhere around $15 a month.
I'm not sure that I understand the math there. I'm trying, but I think the $5 a month was maybe on a very low side, on a very low water bill. I think a $28 bill a month may be low. I suspect that it is. But I think the question might be, how long would a treatment plant last, and how long would we have to pay for it?
Okay, I'll go with that.
Okay, and I'm going to need the help of, Pura is an example. It depends on, how we fund it, how much debt we may have to incur on this, how much equity we may have to put into a system. I think the operating expenses have to be factored in. They're going to be increasing year by year by year, just due to inflation. As little as it may be right now, you can expect that it's going to increase. So I think that is too complicated a question. I think you'd have to give us a little time to come back and give you a better answer.
Yeah, but Don, the report indicated what the annual cost would be almost $400,000. That had to be based upon paying off these capital costs over a period of time. Is that 20 years? Is that 20 years? 20 years.
Yeah, it might be 20 years, sure.
So it's paid out, it would be paid over 20 years.
Joe Manzillo, Hardwood Road. I have a question. You said we want better water. You said that, correct?
Pardon me?
You said we want better water. That's what you just said about 5 minutes ago. Is that correct?
Yes.
Then why isn't it better?
Why isn't it better?
Why aren't you correcting it?
I'm not quite sure.
Why aren't you solving the problem with the water? Regardless, we've all gone through dishwashers, appliances, etc. You just said 5 minutes ago, we want to have better water for everybody. Then why aren't you fixing it?
Well, we're speaking about the issue of hardness.
Okay, so if it's damaging appliances, why aren't you fixing it?
Because we don't see that the hardness is affecting all hard water heaters. As a matter of fact, we've had a hot water heater in our office. It's probably lasted 18, 20 years.
I did not ask about your office.
Well, that's an example.
Why aren't you fixing it for the town?
Well, I guess the answer to the question is why we aren't fixing it is why don't we remove the hardness? I think that's the answer to that question.
Okay, so
that would be the only viable solution that I can think of.
So can you start to remove the hardness? Instead of coming in here with a closed mind, you asked us all to come in, just going back on other people's statements here. So I'm not going to repeat all those. Why aren't you solving the problem and fixing it?
Well, that's why we are here. We've presented a solution.
Then when are you going to implement that?
Pardon me?
When are you going to start to fix it?
Well, we've got to have some sort of a consensus.
You know what? I don't care how many people were interviewed or did that survey online. That's irrelevant. If you put something bad, say, in your gas tank, or water in your gas tank, or sand in your oil in your car, they're going to fix it, they're going to replace it. If you damage hot water tanks, washers, dishwashers, whatever it may be, and you know that's still coming in, why isn't that being taken care of?
The solution, as I said before, is to basically reduce and eliminate the hardness.
So that's what you're going to do, because if it is, everybody hears this, it's on Nutmeg TV, you just said you're going to reduce the hardness. And if you don't, what happens?
What I am saying is that the solution is to reduce hardness. I cannot say that we're going to reduce the hardness because that translates into a treatment plant. And we've already discussed this, that we've run that by our customer base, and the preferences are not there. We just don't see it.
Wait, you said you wanted to fix it, so I don't care what All the customers said, they answered, they didn't answer. If there's a problem, and you just said a few minutes ago you would fix it, but now you're saying it depends on the customers. The customers don't have a choice where they get water from for their house. If you're selling something that's bad, you need to take responsibility and fix it.
I don't think the water is bad as you characterize it.
Excuse me, it's on the data.
Okay.
It's at, well, how many parts? 200, 180 to 200, somewhere higher around the 300, it's up there. So whether you got this data yourself, or you paid somebody to make the collections, or you paid somebody to make it right, where it's not a big deal, that's up to you. I'm done.
Anybody else, just give me one thing. Has anybody has a question that hasn't asked one yet?
Well, I have a few questions. I have a few questions. Well, first of all, I live in the new development in town here at Samuel's Crossing, and I don't have a real problem with the water. So I'm just kind of curious why so many people have such a serious problem. Are they on old water lines or old cast iron lines? Are they in the Woodford Well District or what? Because I'm just kind of shocked to hear how bad it is for some people. Well, secondly, I offer some questions to Lori here. I'm kind of interested in the health aspects of hard water because I come from Avon. I moved here from Avon. I had my own artesian well, which I think was extremely hard water, and I always thought it was healthy water because it was hard. It's got the calcium and magnesium, which is supposedly you need for your health. Apparently there are no standards, and the federal government doesn't say it's good or bad, and so you're looking at the contaminant levels, they're all perfect and fine, you have great water, but hard water apparently it doesn't have an adverse effect on your health, and it has a small positive effect on your health. So I guess it's appliances versus a small positive effect on your health, in which case, based on what I'm hearing, probably it makes sense to reduce the hardness of the water because some people are having serious issues here. And I kind of like the water. I think it's good water, but my wife's still buying bottled water. So apparently she's worried about it. I don't understand why she's worried about it. It looks fine to me. So it's certainly a controversial issue when you talk about hard water. Everybody's got an opinion, and everybody's, some people are really worried about it, but the health issue to me is of interest because, it just seems like to a certain extent that calcium and magnesium has positive health effects. And so I don't know if Lori wanted to kind of address that a little bit. I'm just kind of interested in that. But I don't understand why some people have such a serious problem with the water. Maybe because our water lines are new. They haven't acquired the contaminants that then would eventually end up in our systems. Maybe that's why our water seems pretty good in the new development.
My last question. This is a privately owned company, right? Trump didn't give out his income taxes. How about the guys that own this company? How much are they getting out of their privately owned money that they don't want to spend their money that they're going to get? They spend $1 million for infrastructure this year coming. How much of these guys are getting on their end of the deal, and they don't want to part with it to put the filtering system in? How much?
Last statement regarding a couple things I forgot, because he had mentioned that his shower handle just broke off from being corroded. Mine actually did too about 2 months ago. My place was built in 1988. We've had to replace all of our shutoffs because they've all started dripping at one point or another, including our main shutoff when we moved in. The place was 20 years old, and the main shutoff had corroded already. What are you going to do to help people? This is your product. If I have a factory and my factory makes widgets and people aren't wanting my widgets, maybe they have a choice to go elsewhere, we don't. And I need to do something with my factory to make better widgets, that is on me if I want to stay in business. It is not everything I push out to my customers. I'm not going to bill them for my new factory or my improvements. What are you going to do to help this town?
Well, in response to your question, you know, we have softening units. We can discuss those with you. The water is not corrosive. The water has a scale on it. It is sometimes, or it can produce scale. I think that's probably why you may have dripping faucets.
Appliances, my faucets, my shut-off valves, everything are being destroyed. I'm not the only one. This is costing me money. How can you help? It is your product.
Is it possible that we could send somebody over and inspect your faucets?
Sure.
We'd love to do that. Can we get your name after the meeting?
But
It would be
just be
very
for me.
helpful and educational to us also.
I'm an angry redhead right now, but I'm not the only one in town. I'm the one speaking up. So are you going to do this for other people? Are you going to say, hey, reach out to us. Maybe we can help you with the cost of a plumber to come out and put a softening unit. You buy the unit, we'll pay for half the plumber. We'll help you. We know we have a bad product. We're working on it. We have to look at things, but you know what? We'll help you. in some way.
Let's start with you first. And then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who has a question or a comment?
Hi, I'm Jesse Pringle. I live at Samuel's Crossing too. I just moved to Plainville last year, and I am pretty familiar with water chemistry. So I tested my water, and it is pretty hard. It's 220 something, I think. So I sent a very long and detailed letter to Don, and he invited me over to their office where I met with both Don and Nick for probably well over an hour talking about stuff, but I expressed some concerns with the survey that was presented. I didn't think it was formulated well, and I thought that 18% was a pretty bad sample. However, they felt that that was what they got, so they were just going to go with the response that they got from the survey. Since I am familiar with water chemistry, I knew that hard water isn't a problem for health, so it's not a problem for the DPH. I also felt some of the suggestions by Valley Water about cleaning your fixtures with CLR were poor, and saying that minerals in your water is good for your health, which they said even in this presentation that it's a small amount of minerals in your normal daily diet. So that was not really a valid point. It's not really great for your health. It doesn't matter in your overall diet. That being said, I thought the only real solution was to install some sort of treatment option. And I've read through the 2017 survey that was done and the Teague and Bond results. And I thought you guys did a good job on that study. But in talking with Don and Nick, and looking at that survey results, I think the only real option is to install some treatment plants. And what it comes down to is, are residents willing to pay for that or not? That's really the question. Do you want to pay for it? I've been to the office. I don't think they're making a ton of money there, to be honest. I don't think they've got a lot, but this is a capital investment of $3 or $4 million plus operating of $99,000 a year, I think. So over 20 years amortized, it's going to cost a good amount of money. And that's going to, I did calculations for me. It's going to cost me about $7 a month or so, just based on the customers, the amount of the 20 years that would have to be paid back. Personally, $7 a month is great. I don't want to install a water softener in my house because that's a big pain, and I don't want to deal with my own operation and maintenance of that. I don't want to bring salt bags to my basement every month or two. So again, I think it goes back to the town, and the question is, do we want to pay for it or not. And I don't think the survey that Valley Water did was good enough. I think we should do it more, but I think the town should probably lead that. Thanks.
All right, I do want to thank everybody for coming tonight, and I want to thank the presenters, including Valley Water Tie and Bond, PURA, Department of Public Health, and the Plainville Southington Health District. Your voices have been heard. It's my plan as the town manager to sit down with the PURA and Department of Public Health and Valley Water to discuss this meeting this evening. I think there's some valid points with regards to the survey, and I think we'll talk about that. I think that if there are some volunteers here, there's some passionate people here this evening, and it would help if we had some volunteers, perhaps to, and for those of you who go to NASOs all the time, perhaps you've seen me sitting there, raising funds, as there is just about every other weekend, people sitting there. And that's not a bad place to get a good pulse for the community. And, perhaps, having a table set up there for people to come in and have a conversation or just talk to them about it, and to be able to say, hey, 18% of what? You know what I mean? I think that's a good point. I mean, I know what my water bill is, and most people probably do, and if they do the math, they can, but I'm not sure that a lot of people actually did the math, or, 18% could sound like a lot. $7 a month doesn't sound like a lot to you, but I can tell you $7 a month sounds like a lot to other people. So we'll have continuing discussion. It may end up, nothing changing. But Valley Water did go through the study. They spent a significant amount of money to look into this, to look into what the alternatives were, to come to the point where we're at today. This wouldn't have happened if 2 years ago we didn't get together and get people to express their concerns about the quality of the water. There were people who were worried about the health aspect of it. I think we have addressed that by and large, at least the Department of Public Health, and we have to rely on them. They're an independent group that has no horse in the game, so to speak. But the impact to homes is significant in many instances. I live in town. It's not as significant where I happen to live, but it still is an impact. But we go everywhere from it's okay, it's bad, but I can live with it. Okay, no, I don't think anybody said I love it. Did anybody say on the survey they love the water?
Humor is not funny right now. Not that we know of.
Not that we, yeah. I guess the point is I think most people said it's not good, but I can live with it. I don't want to pay more. And then there's people who say it's really terrible. So I mean that's kind of the range where we're at. And I don't know what that means for other water systems in the state. Other water systems in the state. I know there's people here from New Britain this evening, that New Britain Water Company, or New Britain Water. And, I've seen comments with people who've come from New Britain that say, oh, it's the greatest water in the world. Their water primarily comes from reservoirs. So that's, but we don't have that in this particular instance. And I don't know what the survey results would be for similar water systems that pull water out of the ground. And that's the type of information that I'm going to seek out and take a look at that. And I'm not sure where it's going to go. I can't promise you anything except that, from my perspective, it doesn't end here tonight. It may end here. It may end 3 or 4 months from now when we've had these discussions, or it may continue. But if you signed up and we have your email address, we will tell you, we'll try to keep you informed about what's going on. Okay? So thanks again. And if you want to have any particular discussion with anybody right now, come on down. Otherwise, have a good night. I will tell you that for those of you interested in the town budget or the education budget that was voted on today, it did pass 800 and some odd votes to 300 and some odd votes. So I think that's a positive thing from my perspective. Perhaps not yours, but anyhow. All right, have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.